We continue our reading of Lest We Forget, a daily devotional by author George R. Knight. Today's reading, March 2, Bates Gets the Sabbath, Part 3. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Matthew 5:18. Among those Seventh-day Baptists who interacted with the Millerites, one of the more significant is Rachel Oakes. By early 1844, she had not only accepted the Advent message, but had shared her Sabbath perspective with the Adventist Church congregation in Washington, New Hampshire, where her daughter, Mrs. Cyrus Farnsworth, was a member. Her first convert apparently was William Farnsworth, who had early convinced her on the Millerite teachings. Another person she brought to the Sabbath was Frederick Wheeler, who, while preaching in the Washington church, remarked that all persons confessing communion with Christ should be ready to follow him and obey and keep God's commandments in all things. Later, Rachel Oakes reminded Wheeler of his remarks. Quote, I came near getting up in the meeting at that point, unquote, she told him, quote, and saying something, end quote. What was it you had in mind to say? Wheeler asked. I wanted to tell you that you would be better set that communion table back and put the cloth over it until you began to keep the commandments of God. Wheeler was somewhat in shock from her frontal assault. He later told a friend that Mrs. Oakes' words cut him deeper than anything he had ever had spoken to him. But he thought them over, studied the Bible on the topic, and soon began to observe the seventh-day Sabbath. That was apparently in March 1844. Subsequently, several members of the Washington congregation joined Wheeler and Williams Farnsworth in honoring the biblical Sabbath. When I get to the kingdom, one person I want to look up is Rachel Oakes. She must have been a real character. The least we can say about her is that she certainly wasn't bashful about sharing her beliefs. God had given her a voice, and she used it in spreading his Sabbath truth. I don't know if her approach was Christ-centered or somewhat offensive, but I trust that it was the former, since Wheeler, a Methodist minister, did not turn away from her in disgust. One of the lessons of Rachel Oakes is that we never know the widespread influence we have on other people, and that goes for all of us, even you. This concludes our reading today of Lest We Forget.